Number one, y minus 5 over y plus 3 equals 5 over 7. Anytime you've got a fraction on the left equal to a fraction on the right, this is what's called a proportion. And these are nice because you can solve them just by cross multiplying, which means you're going to take the y minus 5 times the 7 and then the 5 times the y plus 3 and put it equals in the middle. So we'll go ahead and do that. 7 times the y minus 5 equals, the equals in the middle, and then 5 times the y plus 3. And then all you're going to do after that is distribute, get your y's on the same side, and then solve for y. Get the y's on the same side. You can do that either side, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go ahead and subtract 5y. Just to get rid of them from the right, move them all to the left. So we've got 2y now. Bring down the minus 35, bring down the equals, and on the right side we've only got 15. Continue to solve that, add 35. Two y on the left equals 50, and then divide by 2. Y equals 25. Number 2, 1/3 plus 3 over 8 equals s, this is an s, over 12. This one is not a proportion. A proportion, again, like on number 1, is just a fraction equal to a fraction. This one's a little bit more involved in that. So not a proportion, so we're not going to cross multiply. Here we've got to multiply the tops, the numerators, by a common denominator. And in some cases, you can just, in order to find the common denominator, you can look at the largest number, the largest denominator, which in this case would be 12, and then make a list of its multiples. All of these denominators, the 3, the 8, and the 12, they don't go into 12, but you could try 24, which would be the next multiple of 12. You could try 36, which would be the next multiple of 12, and then so on. It just so happens that all of those go into 24. 3 goes into 24, 8 goes into 24, and of course 12 goes into 24. So we're going to take that number and multiply it by the tops. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this. 1 over 3 plus 3 over 8 equals s over 12, and we're going to multiply that 24. Multiply 24 by all the tops. You can go ahead and do that on your calculator. 1 times 24 divided by 3. That'll give you 8. 3 times 24 divided by 8. And then s times 24 divided by 2. So the 24 over 12, that's going to give you 2. And then you've still got the s there. And then just take it from there. On the left, 8 plus 9 is 17 equals 2s. Trying to get s by itself, divide by 2. And we end up with s equals 17 over 2. Third example, 1 over 3 minus 1 over 6 equals 1 over y. So again, not a proportion. So when you do see that, you can just cross multiply. This one's not a proportion, so we're going to multiply the tops by a common denominator. And like I said before, you can start with the largest number and then go through some of its multiples, 6, 12, 18, and you might in some cases need to make a longer list than that. But if you look at the 3 and the 6, both of those numbers go into 6, so we can use the 6. But you'll also want to notice that we have got a denominator that's got a y, so our denominator is going to need to be 6y. So we're going to take that times the numerators. Multiplying 6y times the tops. And then we'll go ahead and reduce that. So 1 times 6y over 3 is 2y. And one way to look at that also is 6 and 3 reduced to just 2. So basically on top, you've got 1 times 2y, which of course becomes that, minus here 1 times 6y over 6. If you look at the 6 and the 6, they cancel out. So you basically on top just got 1 times y. And then on the right, you've got a y on top, a y on bottom. Both those cancel out. And so you're just left with 1 times 6. And then when we put the left together, 2y minus 1y just gives you 1y. And then on the right, 6. Number 4, y plus 5 over y equals negative 6. Again, not a proportion. We don't have a fraction equal to a fraction. We've got more than that going on here. So we're going to multiply the tops by a common denominator. And in this case, we've only got a y denominator. So, of course, our common denominator is just going to need to be that. No numbers that we're going to need to tack onto the front of that. Just going to multiply y times every single numerator. So we've got y times y. That gives you y squared plus, here the y on top and the y on bottom would cancel. So we've just got the 5 left over, equals negative 6 times y. Nothing cancels since there's nothing on bottom. This one a little bit different because we've got a y squared there. If you've got y squared, so this is unlike the previous example, this is quadratic. There you'll want to set it equal to 0. And then we'll either try to factor it or we'll use the quadratic formula. But if we're setting it equal to 0, we want to move everything to the y squared side. So this negative 6y that's on the right, we want to move it over to the left. So we're going to do that by adding it. That removes it from the right. Add it to the left. So we got 0 on the right. On the left, none of these are like terms here. So don't catch yourself putting y squared and 6y together or 5 and 6 together. None of those are like terms. So they stay y squared, 6y, and 5. And from there, if you've got a trinomial like that, you'll want to go ahead and factor it. Hopefully you'll remember trinomials factor into 2 parentheses. You got a y at the front of both of those. If you've got a plus and plus up here, you can go ahead and assume pluses in the middle of those binomials. And these last 2 things have to multiply to be 5 and then add to 6. Should be pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of things that multiply to be 5. 5 and 1. And they also add to be 6. So here we end up y plus 5 equals 0 or y plus 1 equals 0. And then work those out algebraically. Subtract 5. Subtract 1. And you should end up with 2 different answers, negative 5 and negative 1. Number 5, this is our last example. We've got 1/3 minus 8 over 25x equals 8 over 25 minus 1 over 15x. Not a proportion, so we're going to multiply the tops by a common denominator. And if you look at the numbers, we're going to start with the largest number just to see if we can find something that all of those denominators go into. So starting with the 25, which is the largest number. 3 doesn't go into 25, so we'll keep going. 50 would be the next multiple of 25. 3 doesn't go into 25. Next multiple would be 75. If you do 75 divided by 3, you get 25, so it comes out evenly. 3 does go into 75. Also, if you check 15, 15 also goes into 75, so it looks like 75 is going to be our common denominator, and you'll notice that a couple of those denominators have an x on them, so we're going to tack an x onto that, and it'll be 75x that we're going to multiply by the tops. So I'll go ahead and rewrite this. 1 over 3 minus 8 over 25x equals 8 over 25 minus 1 over 15x. And we'll multiply that common denominator. And you can use your calculator for this, but on a few of them, you'll notice x on top and x on bottom that cancel. X on top, x on bottom that cancel. And then you're just left with the numbers. So you can do this on a calculator. 75 over 3. And then if you do 8 times 75 over 25, you end up with 24. The x's are gone there, so none of those. On the next one, 8 times 75 over 25 again, you end up with 24, and we've got an x on there that didn't cancel, so we've still got that. And then 1 times 75 over 15 ends up being 5. So unlike number 4, we don't have any x squareds here, so we'll just solve this like normal. Don't need to set it equal to 0. We're just going to get the x's on one side, get the numbers on the other. Subtract 24x. No x's on the right now. Subtract 24x on the left. So we've got 1x minus 24 equals negative 5. And x equals 19.